This is Algebra 2, test number 13. We are picking up, this is part 2, picking up on number 12. It says 4y plus 1 is equal to negative 16 plus 5y. We're getting our variables on the same side here. So 5y is larger than 4y. So let's bring the smaller 4y over by subtracting 4y. You subtract it on the left, do the same on the right. So that leaves you with 1y on the right. At the same time, you could take your constant terms and bring them to the opposite side. Negative 16 or minus 16, you undo that by adding 16. When you do it to one side, do it to the other side. 1 plus 16 is 17. So you have y all by itself is equal to 17. Number 13, you have to simplify one side by distributing. Negative 4 times y is negative 4y. Negative 4 times 5 is minus 20. On the other side, you still have negative 6y plus 13. Now you got variables on both sides. So let's move our smaller negative 6y over to our larger negative 4y. Negative 6 means minus 6, so add 6y to undo it. Add it here too. Negative 4y plus 6y is positive 2y. And we could also bring over our negative 20 to the other side by adding 20 to both sides. If you add it to the right, add it to the left again. 13 plus 20, same signs. You add them up, and you get 33. So 2y is equal to 33. Divide by 2 on both sides. And y equals, and that's an improper fraction, but it is reduced, 33 over 2. Undo. Subtraction of 1 first by adding 1. If you add it to the right, add it to the left. 1 plus 1 is 2 is equal to x over 8. Then undo x over 8, which means divide by 8 by multiplying both sides by 8. 8 times 2, x's value is 16. 15, 6 plus 8n is equal to 38. Undo positive or plus 6 by subtracting it on both sides. 38 minus 6 is 32. So you have 8n by itself on the left. Get n by itself completely by dividing by 8 on both sides. 32 divided by 8 is 4. You have to distribute 6 times y is 6y times 5 is plus 30 is equal to 90. Get y by itself by subtracting 30 on the left. Do it on the right as well. 90 minus 30 is 60, so 6y is equal to 60. Divide by 6 on both sides. Y's value then is 10. 17, find C. Find a missing value. In this case, it is C. C is equal to B over 2, or half of B, squared. B's value then right here is 16. So 16 divided by 2 is 8. And 8 squared, C's value is now positive 64. 64. Solve the quadratic by completing the square. First off, this C value is no good, positive 13. So you have to move it over. In order to move it over, you subtract 13. You just undo plus 13. So now what we have is x squared plus 8x plus C, that's the one that we need to find, is equal to 0 minus 13 is negative 13. Find yourself a new C again. C is B over 2 squared, or half of B. B's value in this case is 8. So 8 over 2 is 4, and 4 squared is positive 16. Remember, though, when you get 16 and put it on one side of the equation, you have to add it to the other side to keep it balanced. So negative 13 plus 16, when you put them together, since they're opposite sides, you subtract them. 16 minus 13 is 3, and 6 is the higher absolute value, so it's positive 3. On the left, we're going to, since it's a perfect trinomial, take the square root of x squared and the square root of 16 and get 4. This is the sign that goes between them, plus 4. So we have x plus 4 squared is equal to 3. Now let's get x by itself by undoing x plus 4 squared by taking the square root. If you do the left, do the right. X plus 4 is now by itself is equal to the square root of 3. Remember, it's both positive and negative. And then get x by itself at the end by undoing minus 4, plus 4 by minusing 4. When you subtract it on the left, subtract it on the right. Remember, you can't take 4 away from the square root of 3 because they're not like terms. So this is simply x is equal to negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 3. Same thing for number 19. We're going to complete the square. 47 is not a good C value, so we have to move it over by subtracting it. So x squared plus 12x plus C is equal to negative 47 when you take it away from 0. Find a new value for C by using B's value. 12 divided by 2 is 6, and 6 squared is positive 36. If you add it to the left, add 36 to the right to keep it balanced. So negative 47 plus 36 is going to be negative. They're opposite signs, so subtract them. 7 minus 6 is 1. 4 minus 3 is 1. And 47 is the higher absolute value. It's negative, so it's negative 11 on the right. Okay? The left side is a perfect trinomial, so you can take the square root of the first term and the square root of the last term, 6, and this sign goes in between them. So x plus 6 squared is equal to negative 11. Undo x plus 6 squared by taking the square root of it. That'll cancel it out. Take the square root of the other side to balance it out. It leaves you with x plus 6 on the left equals the square root of negative 11. Remember, anytime you have a negative value under a radical, you have to multiply it by the imaginary number I. So one more thing we got to do, we have to get rid of plus 6 on the left by subtracting it. Subtract it on the right. Remember, you don't get any version of number 5 here because they're not like terms. So this is simply a plus bi, or x equals negative 6 plus or minus I times the square root of 11. '20 says to rewrite this one in vertex form. Y is equal to x squared minus 10x plus 16. Again, 16 is not a good C value, so we have to move it over by subtracting it. When you subtract 16 on both sides, you get y minus 16 equals x squared minus 10x plus c. We need a new c value. So take b's value, 10, divided by 2. It doesn't matter if it's positive or negative, remember, because when we square it, it's going to go back to being positive anyways. 10 squared is 5, and 5 squared is positive 25. But again, remember, when you add 25 to one side, you have to do the same to the other side. So negative 16 plus 25, when you put them together, since they're opposite signs, you subtract them. 25 minus 16 is 9, and 16 is the higher the lower one. 25 is the higher absolute value. It's positive, so we'll keep it as y plus 9 equals, we have a perfect trinomial on the right. Take the square root of the first term and the square root of the last term. This sign goes in between them, so x minus 5 squared. We're almost to vertex form. Remember, vertex form is just y equals what's on the right side. So get y by itself by subtracting 9. If you subtract the left, subtract the right. Remember, y is equal to x minus 5 squared minus 9. You can't take it away from negative 5 since it's inside of the parentheses. The vertex of this equation would be positive 5. Remember, it's the opposite of what you see. And negative 9, it's exactly what you see. So 5, negative 9. Solving these equations by finding square roots. Undo order of operations. Remember, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, or PEMDAS, goes opposite. It goes this way when you're undoing it. Exponents we take with radicals. Remember that as well. So you look for any addition and subtraction. Nothing's adding or subtracting with this one. Multiplication and division is next. 5 times x squared is next, so undo 5 times by dividing by 5. Do it here as well. X squared is equal to 6. Get rid of x squared by taking the square root. If you do it to the left, again, do it to the right. So x is equal to both positive and negative square root of 6. '22 says to rationalize this denominator. Remember, you can't have a radical at the bottom, so whatever it is, multiply it by it over itself. 4 times the square root of 3 will be written just like that, over the square root of 3 times the square root of 3. Remember, if it's the same radical, whatever's underneath that radical, you could just simply take it out and put it over 3. If you do need to multiply them together, though, the square root of 3 times the square root of 3 is the square root of 9, and the square root of 9 comes right back to being 3. So 4 square root of 3 over 3. 23, multiply and simplify if possible. You multiply these two together, 30 and 3, you get the square root of 90. And then you have to take out a perfect factor that is into 90. 9 is 1. 9 times 10 would give you 3 times the square root of 10. What you can do instead is you can factor this out, not to perfect radicals, but to something that matches this one. The square root of 3 times the square root of 10. That's absolutely 30, 3 times 10. Then when you multiply it times the square root of 3, now you're doing that shortcut of multiplying the same radical time itself. So anytime you multiply the same radical times itself, you take whatever that number is, 3 times the square root of 10. And it'll give you the same thing going that way. 24 says to multiply this, you got a FOIL, F-O-I-L, first terms. 8 times negative 5, negative 40. O, or your outside terms, 8 times the square root of 10, positive 8, square root of 10. Then I is your inner terms. Negative square root of 10 times negative 5. Negative times a negative is a positive 5 square root of 10. Then L are your last terms. L. Let's move all of this down. L are your last terms. Negative square root of 10 times positive square root of 10 will be negative, because a positive times a negative is a negative. Square root of 10 times the square root of 10 is the square root of 100, which is simply negative 10. And that's going back to that shortcut I showed just a second ago. Now we need to put our like terms together. Your like terms in this case, negative 40 and negative 10, or negative 50 when you put them together. And 8 square root of 10 plus 5 square root of 10 is a positive 13 square root of 10. Again, that's standard form where the radical is second. 25 and 6 combining like terms. 2 times this, just distribute. Negative 6y. 2 times this is negative 4 plus 9y. Combine your like terms, negative 6y and positive 9y. Opposite signs, subtract them. 9 minus 6 is 3y. 9 is the higher absolute value, so it's positive 3y minus 4. We cannot put these two together since they're not like terms. Simplify this one. Inside of parentheses is what you do first. You work your order of operations inside of parentheses, though. So in this first set of parentheses, we have 6 squared. You got to do exponents first. So that gives us negative 5 plus 6 squared is 36. Inside of the other set of parentheses, we can do that operation right now. 2 minus 4 is negative 2. So again, still inside of parentheses, negative 5 plus 36 is positive 31. Still right next to negative 2 to the third power. Before we multiply 31 times 2, we got to do the third power of negative 2. Negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4, times negative 2 is negative 8. So now we have negative 8 times 31. 1 times, it's going to be a negative value, since a negative times a positive is a negative. 8 times 1 is 8. And 8 times 3 is 24, negative 248. 27, 4f of x equals negative 5x minus 1. Find f of negative 4. So in place of x, we're going to plug in negative 4. So 4f of negative 4, this is the one you don't do anything with, equals negative 5 times negative 4 minus 1. Order of operations says to multiply first. A negative times a negative is a positive. 20 minus 1, which is 19. So f of negative 4 is 19. And number 28 says graph the equation y equals 2/5 x plus 2, y equals mx plus b. B tells you where to begin at positive 2 on your y-axis, so begin at 1, 2, there's your first point. Mx plus b tells you your slope or where to move. It says 2 over 5. It's rise over run, up or down for the top number. Positive tells you to go up 2 more, and run tells you to go left or right. It's positive, so you're going to go 5 to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here is our second point right here, up 2 and to the right 5, and we're going to do our best we can to draw a straight line through those points. And there's your graph to match y equals 2/5 x plus 2.